Today we have not one but two helicopters for your consideration, the 500E and the H125. Both are made by Cown Simulation and they are both beautiful. They both have the same price tag and they aren't cheap either. Don't get me wrong, you're certainly getting your money's worth. But if you have a budget to think about, which one should you get? Or at least, which one should you get first and which one can wait for your next paycheck? To try and settle this, I'll be scoring each helicopter out of 10 in the following categories. First off, performance. While the 500E does have a negligible cruise speed advantage, the H125 has a significantly greater max altitude, endurance and range. So it can go higher and further than the 500E, giving it an advantage for search and rescue type operations. Next up we have liveries, and you are simply spoilt for choice with both helicopters. The 500E has 63 liveries, and the H125 has 100. Now I've not closely inspected every single one of them, but the ones I've tried have all been good quality, and there's certainly something for everyone. While I like to have some variety to choose from, and the H125 may have the advantage in terms of numbers, I kind of feel that when you get to a certain point, you can have too much choice. You could easily spend an hour just picking out what livery you're going to use before you even started flying. Still, there are worse problems in life. Here's a closer look at the H125. The front and passenger doors open and close. And if you undo these catches, there's space for luggage in the back. Just remember to do them all back up again when you close the lid. And on the left hand side, as well as access to the baggage compartment, there's a smaller compartment for the crew's flight bags. So, how does the 500E compare? It also has doors open and close, but no baggage compartment. And the passenger cabin is a bit more cosy. The doors on both aircraft are a nice touch, but it seems a shame the 500E doesn't have more panels that open. It doesn't affect the aircraft in any way, it's just something nice to play with. Something that really sets these helicopters apart is the level of customization available. The add-ons can be managed through the weight and balance screen by updating the roads with the indicated values. On the H125 you have a choice for longer skid steps, and to add or remove the bare paws, which are the little feet at the back of the skids. You can also remove the front doors, the nose mirror, add a side basket, remove the wire cutters for a sleeker look, and I especially like the floats which deploy on contact with water. However, be aware not all add-ons are compatible with each other. Here, adding the floats has removed my skid steps. You can also add a movie camera if you want to play at Flying Film Director. There's also a sling and a spotlight. And there are add-ons for the inside of the helicopter too, like this crate. However, these can be a little buggy. Setting the weight back to 0 doesn't seem to remove the item. And if you try to add another one like this around the world setup, the item will change, but you'll still be registering the weight of both items. The easiest fix is to simply press reset, but that will clear your entire configuration. If rescue missions are your thing, then you'll like the medical setup. You can hide both the patient and the medic, although this won't affect your weight. The medical equipment looks pretty good, although the textures seem lower quality than the rest of the helicopter. However, as a pilot, you really should be looking forward. If it's passengers are after, we have this gentleman on the right of the aircraft, and this lady on the left. And if you're looking for a co-pilot to keep you company, there's this rather stoic gentleman, although he doesn't say much, or move at all for that matter. So what does the 500E have to offer? Well, it also has the removable bare paws, and removable doors. If you want to practice hovering around tall structures, you might want to consider this utility bench and a worker to sit on it. It looks as though you should be able to remove the skid mirror, but that doesn't seem to be working at the moment. There's a cargo pod for extra baggage, and an option to remove the wire cutters too. The 500E also has floats, but they're fixed and a little less stylish. And there's a movie camera too. If you want to add the spray kit, you'll need to remove the floats and the cargo pod. Like most of these add-ons, it's not currently functional, but Cown Simulation do promise that it will be in a later update. So, if you always want to be a crop duster, watch this space. And of course, there's also a spotlight. And let's not forget these two, who are apparently regular customers. Or maybe they're just friends with this guy. These are some really cool add-ons, but for me, the floats give the H125 a slight edge. However, the glitches swapping the add-ons on both helicopters stops them getting top marks. For the flight tests, I'll be equipping the floats to both helicopters so we can do some water landings. We're taking off today from Haneda Airport in Tokyo, Japan. Starting the H125 is fairly straightforward. First, check the collective is down and the throttle's in idle. Then turn on the battery. Pitot heat is often a good idea. And you should only need the fuel pump on for about 5 seconds. That should do it. Then you just need to look above you to turn on the starter. And now we can see the blades starting to move. Keep an eye on the RPM as it builds and stabilises. Once it's stable, you can turn on the alternator. Now is the time to roll in the throttle, which in this simulation just involves clicking it. For me, I feel this detracts from the realism a little. If you turn the horn on before the RPM has settled in the green zone, you'll hit beep at you, but it will stop as soon as it's up to speed. There are some test buttons you can use as part of your pre-flight checks. And if you have the floats equipped, you'll want to press this button so they auto deploy in the water. You can, if you wish, remove the ADF display and the radar altimeter, although I'm not really sure why you'd want to. And you can also switch out your GPS unit. If you find the dust and heat blow effects are hammering your frame rate, you can turn them off here. For the flight portion of this video, you may notice that my horn light is on and the RPM seems to be doing weird things. This is because Flight Control Replay doesn't know the difference between a collective and a throttle. The H125 needs just a touch of right pedal to stop it twisting to the left on takeoff. Once you're picked up into a hover, it's not actually too difficult to taxi. Generally the handling is pretty good. To be honest, the flight models for both helicopters feel pretty similar. They're certainly more challenging than a lot of helicopters available for MSFS, but they also feel more authentic. More like you're actually flying a helicopter. Now we're going to go for a water landing. If I'm being totally honest, I'm probably coming in a little bit fast. And as you see, as soon as I touch the water, the floats automatically deploy. However, this isn't like a seaplane. When floating on water, I'd expect to be able to taxi around by pitching forwards and backwards. Instead, the helicopter seems to be stuck in one place, like it was on solid ground, and just rocks. Also, if you look closely at the floats, you'll see there's a box cut out of the water around them, which spoils the look slightly. I'm sure both these issues are due to perfectly legitimate technical restrictions, but they are a little disappointing. Now for a rooftop landing, where we see just how challenging the H125 can be, or how bad I am at landing it. My biggest difficulty with landing this helicopter is the limited visibility downward due to its very large wide main console. Not my tidiest landing, but we're on the helipad and nothing is broken. If you want to retract the floats, you can do so with a switch on the collective. You can also use the same switch to manually deploy them. Starting the 500E is a little more complicated, but quite easy when you know how. Once you check your collective is down and the throttle is off, you'll need to turn the ignition key forwards. Then turn on the battery, and just like the H125, the fuel pump only needs to be on for around 5 seconds. While it warms up, you can go ahead and turn on the lights and the pitot heater. Now this is the tricky bit. There's an invisible starter switch at the top of the collective. Once you press that, you'll need to roll the throttle to idle at around 15% RPM. However, you need to use the mouse to twist the throttle, so you probably won't be able to see the RPM gauge, so just wait about 1 second before rolling the throttle to idle. If you get it right, you should see the RPM gauge continue to climb. If you don't, you won't. Once it stabilises, you can turn on the alternator and slowly roll the throttle into max. Once everything settles down, you're ready to fly. The 500E twists the opposite way to the H125, so needs a small amount of left pedal. It also likes to drift to the right slightly, so a little left stick is required, and you may want to trim this out once you get going. Once you get everything stable, it should taxi without any problems. The biggest issue I had when I started flying this helicopter was flying from the left hand side. Most helicopters fly from the right, so it was a little disorientating at first, but you do get used to it. I actually find it a little easier to handle than the H125. I'm not sure why exactly, it just feels a bit more stable, but without feeling like I'm getting assistance from the simulation. And now for another water landing. Just like with the H125, when on water, we appear to be very much stuck in one place. Now for the same roof landing in the 500E. One of the things I really like about this helicopter is the much better visibility due to the more compact main console. This makes it much easier to keep track of where you're trying to land. Definitely an improvement over the previous landing. For me, the superior visibility and ease of handling gives the 500E the edge when it comes to the flying experience. And last, but certainly not least, the auto-rotation test. We're back in the 500E, and I've just pulled the emergency fuel shutoff. This was a challenging auto-rotation. You need to maintain your airspeed without letting your rotor slow down too much. I confess it took me a couple of attempts to get this without crashing. There are much better examples out there of auto-rotation, but at the end of the day, any landing you can walk away from is a good one, and any auto-rotation landing you can walk away from is amazing. And while the 500E was challenging, the H125 was a relentless torment of crash after crash until eventually I got one where I survived. This helicopter is hell-bent on rolling to the right and landing upside down. The only way to prevent it is to ditch the collective, keep your airspeed between 60 and 80 knots, and try to slow your vertical speed shortly before you touch down. If you can reduce your airspeed before touching down, that's a bonus, but the priority here is not dying. I've not auto-rotated a helicopter in real life, but I imagine this is much more accurate than you get for something like Cadbury G2, which is pretty easy by comparison. And while it has a frustrating learning curve, I do like the realism. That said, I think the 500E has the edge here. While it was challenging, it wasn't as frustrating as the H125. But now it's time to add up the scores. Out of a total of 60 points, the 500E scored 50, whereas the H125 scored 52. These are outstanding helicopters, and I really enjoy flying both of them, and I honestly didn't know which would come out on top when I started this video. I feel the H125 brings marginally more value, so if you could only get one, that'd be the one I recommend. But really, you should just get both. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Please remember to hit like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments which of these is your favourite. For now though, have fun flying.